Hi, this is Graham McLaren at Falling from Trees, where we help leaders connect to nature. Welcome to our series, Happiness, Health, and the Human Nature Connection. The following presentation is a live recording and is titled Healthy Communities and Nature. To learn more about our programs, check out our website at fallingfromtrees.com.
Earlier this week, I had an opportunity to speak to a group down in Coeur d'Alene on a topic that I'm going to be speaking about tomorrow. It's happiness, health, and the human nature connection. And after that talk, a gentleman came up to me who'd participated in the workshop, and he was really excited to tell me the story of his wife, who he said she had literally saved her life through experiences in nature. Well, this morning I had some opportunity to speak with this woman on the phone. Her name's Jenny. In 2011, Jenny weighed 500 pounds. She and her husband were terrified about the potential health issues and the possibility of losing her life. She made a very firm stance that I'm going to change. And she made two choices. The first one was she joined Weight Watchers. But the second one was she turned to her husband and she said, I want to get outside in nature and I want to connect with my family more. And I want you to support me on this journey. When they started, the mission was just to get her to the park, which was a quarter-mile from her house, so she could push her daughter on the swing. She couldn't make it there the first time she tried. In fact, it took a number of tries. They had to set markers further and further until one day she actually made it all the way to the park. Well, they continued on this journey, and she has managed, since then, she has lost 300 pounds. She goes out hiking with her family all the time. In fact, they have now hiked all over Idaho and all over Washington. She runs, she bikes, she's competed in a triathlon. Now her story is being used to help inspire other people who are trying to make the same journey. And I wanted to start with that story today because I believe stories like this have a huge potential to shape the future of our communities. In 2012, the Centers for Disease Control reported that 35% of Americans are obese. And obesity-related illnesses are one of the largest causes of preventable death in the United States. In 2013, the CDC reported that 75% of our healthcare dollars are being spent on the treatment of chronic illnesses. However, research has shown that physical activity reduces the risk of a variety of health problems, including cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and osteoporosis. The most recent research is beginning to show that exercise outdoors in nature actually has even more profound beneficial outcomes. Exposure to nature is now being used to treat and prevent a variety of stress-related illnesses and depression. It's also being used to assist in the management of symptoms of Alzheimer's and dementia. So outdoor physical activity is a powerful, low-cost treatment and preventative tool, one that can be enjoyed and sustainable in the long term. It's been found that the amount of time people spend engaging in outdoor physical activity is positively linked to the amount of nature they have in their neighborhoods. So I'll go more into the relationship of nature and human health tomorrow, but I think we can already start to see some of the potential benefits of green spaces in our communities. Would you agree? Awesome. So what's nature got to do with healthy communities? Natural spaces promote physical and mental health. They help with purifying drinking water, removing air pollutants, mitigating stormwater overflow, and providing places for exercise and recreation, and also spaces for growing healthy food. Well, there's also something really special as well that the presence of nature offers, and it's a social benefit. And that's what I want to spend my focus on here, is the social benefit of nature in our communities, in our neighborhoods. And I'm going to start in a little bit of an unusual way by talking about myself. So, I began sneaking out of my parents' house as a teenager, shortly after we moved to a new town. What I found was, especially during the school year, after long days where I spent almost the entire day indoors, sometimes I did spend the entire day indoors, and I found that it was getting harder and harder for me to fall asleep at night without getting some action and some movement. And so I would pace around the hallways of my house, and my mom would be, "Stop pacing!" So I started sneaking out of the house. And I would wander the parks along the river. In the summertime, I would climb trees. I might listen to animals moving in the dark. In the wintertime, I might put on my skis and actually ski across the frozen river to play in the parks on the other side. But I never really talked about this to anyone. I thought it might be kind of weird. And I didn't know anybody else who was doing that. However, what I found was that over time, more and more of my teenage relationships started to involve experiences in the outdoors. And as I look back now, I suspect that I might have had an intuitive understanding of some of the benefits of getting outside. In fact, it's been shown that exposure to nature during the teenage years can provide an incredibly positive influence, alleviating feelings of isolation, emotional instability, and reducing the symptoms of depression. Time in nature can contribute to feelings of community and belongingness. Children and teens who are exposed to more nature experience improved social interactions and feelings of social connectedness, and they tend to create stronger and tighter social networks. The positive effects of exposure to nature are most pronounced in children who have recently experienced acute distresses through such things as moving to a new home, a new school, perhaps going through the strife of a family divorce, or being bullied. Unfortunately, in our modern world, people are increasingly being isolated from the experience of the natural world because green space is rapidly disappearing from our communities. And because of the cultural shift that has taken us away from spending time outside and in nature. People are spending more and more time indoors, more and more time in motorized vehicles, and lots of time sitting in front of a wide variety of digital screens. And even though we're living a sedentary life, it appears that we're moving faster and faster, trying to get to an ever-increasing number of obligations. And the evidence shows that the loss of interactions with nature changes people's attitudes towards their natural environment. It changes how comfortable they are with nature. And it changes how much they value nature and their experience with it. This loss of interaction with the natural world is guiding more and more people to what some call ecophobia, or a fear of nature. And I might add that for many of those people, it is also leading to a fear of the people who go out into nature. So here's a story of what happened when I ran headfirst into this phenomenon. My in-laws, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, had just bought a new house across town. And my wife and I went to visit and help them move into the new house. Well, while we were visiting, I went for a wander through the new neighborhood, and I came to the edge of the development, and I saw this amazing undeveloped forest stretching in front of me. And I was so elated and so excited, because that's what I look for whenever I go to a new urban or suburban environment, is where are those natural places? And so imagine, if you would, with me, you are standing on a sunny street, and you step into a forest. The lighting changes, it gets a little greener from the sunlight filtering down through the vibrant spring leaves. Maybe you notice that you are surrounded by blackberry, raspberry, thimbleberry, salmonberry bushes that are just waiting to be covered in fruit. As you walk along, perhaps the din of the city noise starts to fade a little, and you hear birdsong almost getting louder and more musical. Well, you walk along and you come to the top of a ravine, not unlike the one that we have back over here on this very land. And perhaps you see a little path or a way to get down through the ferns that are almost as tall as you are. You get down to the bottom of that ravine and you sit down and you smell that earthy moisture. You can listen to the creek gurgling and splashing over the rocks as it cascades by. Maybe you see a snail crawling across the rock. Maybe you see some moss hanging off of a fallen tree, dripping water back into the creek. This was my experience when I found this forest, and I was so excited that I got up and I raced back up out of the ravine. I was so excited to go tell my family about what I had found. And as I got close to the edge of the forest, I saw a police cruiser. And as I stepped out of the trees, the officer stepped out of his car and he put his hand on his holster and he said, "What are you doing in there?" I, not having had any experience with the law before, I guarantee you, my hands went up. And I looked over my shoulder just in case there was somebody else he was talking to. And then the officer, when I turned back, I noticed his demeanor had completely changed. His shoulders relaxed, his hand came off his holster, and a huge grin spread across his face as he said, "Oh, I see, you're taking your daughter for a walk in the woods." Because as I turned, he saw the backpack, and my 1-year-old daughter was asleep. Well, we got to chatting, and he explained to me that somebody in the neighborhood had called 911 because of suspicious activity in the woods. So, that happened once. Okay, twice. Actually, it happened again and again over the next couple of years. The first couple of times were a little bit intense, but after that, I noticed that the officers became more and more relaxed. In fact, sometimes when I would come out of the woods, they would say, "Hey, Graham, how's it going? It's good to see you again. What'd you see today in there?" The last time I came out, that I ran into an officer, he was leaning back against his car with his arms crossed, and he was just gazing up at the clouds floating by. And this is actually an officer I hadn't seen before. And when I stepped out, he said, "Oh, you're the guy who takes his daughter into the woods here. I've heard all about you." Along about this time, I was walking through the neighborhood, and one of the neighbors who was washing his car saw me. He dropped his hose and he came running over. He said, "Hey, are you the guy? Are you the one who takes his daughter and goes for hikes in the woods over there?" I was like, "Yes." He said, "Well, what's it like?" So I told him a couple stories, and I kind of described what it was like. And as we were talking, come to find out that he has 2 older children himself. And I said, "You gotta take them out there. It's too amazing, and it's right around the corner." As the years passed, I noticed that those woods actually started to get some use. The trash along the edges disappeared. I noticed little forts appearing made of sticks, fallen sticks and leaves. And then I started to run into people. Not just 1 or 2, but whole groups of friends and whole families who are out on adventures in this land. I think that we have a lot of options for bringing nature back to the people and bringing people back to nature. When people participate in nature-based activities, it enhances their emotional ties to nature, and it changes the value that they place on it and their behavior toward it. The research also shows us that the presence of nature is connected to safer communities. Nature in our communities actually reduces aggression, it reduces bullying, and it reduces domestic violence. Accessible green outdoor spaces improve our psychological well-being, our social interactions, and our social connectedness in our children and their families, particularly in lower income urban neighborhoods. The presence of nature leads to closer-knit, more peaceful families and communities. So in 2009, I launched a project that I called the Peaceful Valley Wilderness School, just a few-minute walk from downtown Spokane, Washington. My aim was to connect the students and the community to the natural world that was all around them all the time. And there were some experiences we had that really highlighted the impact that time spent in urban green spaces has on our social connections. One of the programs we had, we took children out and we would meet in a different urban wilderness every time we met. Well, the children came back to me later and they told me how they were going back and taking their friends. And then they took their parents. And then their parents came to me and said, "I've lived here for 30 years and I've never even heard of this place. I've driven by that spot for 20 years and I never even saw it." The best news was that then those families started taking other families out with them. They started cleaning up these little urban oases, and they started playing and picnicking and really revitalizing them. Having access to natural spaces and interacting together in natural spaces strengthens our social ties and our social networks. So what does nature have to do with healthy communities? It makes us physically and mentally healthier. Nature positively affects our social experience. Nature fosters deeper, healthier relationships and family experiences. And nature contributes to safer community environments. Children, teens, and adults all benefit from the experience of nature. And the more access they have and the more experience they have in nature, the more they value those experiences. So let's remember Jenny's story and remember what impact the access of nature can truly have. And make sure we continue to grow our community's investments in our own natural spaces. Thanks.
Hey, this is Graham again. Thanks so much for listening to this session. To listen to more of our series on happiness, health, and the human-nature connection, or to find out more about our programs, check out our website at fallingfromtrees.com.